well the second time. But we'll go with it.
Okay, we should be good now.
Yay! Oh, now it echoes. Okay. All right, well, welcome to the Tyson Summer Seminar Series. Those of you that are here in person already heard me say this. Those of you joining us remotely did not. So we'll run through this again. We're glad that you could join us. This is our environmental justice seminar of the summer. We are dedicating one seminar each summer to these topics as part of our social justice commitment here at Tyson. I'm Susan Flowers. I'm the education and outreach coordinator. And I don't want to waste too much more time for the folks here in the room that have already been listening to me for a second. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce our speaker. So Nick Speed is joining us today, born and raised in St. Louis, Missouri. Woo, woo. Nick developed a passion for taking care of the planet, food justice, and working with youth. I feel that. In 2014, he began a 3-year stint as an AmeriCorps Vista and state member. He taught professional development skills and engaged over 200 high school and college students in service learning projects, managed over 100 volunteers, led educational field trips for youth in the Ferguson-Florissant School District, facilitated workshops on organic farming principles, permaculture, and inclusive urban agriculture spaces. From 2017 to 2020, Nick was a youth educator for Seed St. Louis, formerly known as Gateway Greening. I think a lot of folks in St. Louis are familiar with that organization. He taught over 300 students in the St. Louis Public School District about science, nature, and urban agriculture. I became connected to Nick through his work with the Missouri Environmental Education Association, where he currently serves on the board of directors. Currently, Nick is working as the founder of Ujima and George Washington Carver Farms. You're going to learn about all of this today. Ujima is a nonprofit that cultivates community through food justice, environmental stewardship, and youth empowerment. Nick has told me that he is inspired daily by the greater St. Louis area, his family, close friends, and colleagues. Please join me in welcoming Nick Speed to the Tyson community.
All right, make sure I'm off mute. Okay, can everybody hear me? Good, okay. All right, good afternoon. First of all, I just want to say thank you to Susan and everyone behind the scenes who helped make this happen. Really thankful for this opportunity to share my journey and my story with you all. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about justice and healing through urban agriculture and my long journey through figuring out what I want to do with life and the point that I'm at now here with Urban Farm, as well as a nonprofit supporting the greater St. Louis area. Okay, so my pathway to agriculture was definitely not a traditional route. I began my college career at Howard University in DC. At the time, I began my major as a chemical engineer. I wanted to be a forensic scientist like on CSI. And my dreams were crushed when I took Calculus 1 and chemistry and realized that chemical engineering was not my calling. I would go on to change my major several times. And about 2 years later, I had a 1.5 GPA and I was on academic probation. So I transferred to the University of Missouri, St. Louis, moved back home and changed my major to communications. Always have been really passionate about sports, enjoyed when I was younger playing football, running track, baseball. And so my ambitions at the time were to be a sports journalist. I dreamed about the idea of working for ESPN and being on the radio and being on TV. And so after I graduated, actually went and then started grad school at Webster University, pursuing a media communications degree. And so while this was happening, I really wasn't getting the opportunities that I wanted in that field. And then also at the time, I started having doubts about the amount of student loans that I was acquiring. And so for my graduation at UMSL, I did a stint at Matthews Dickey Boys and Girls Club, working with the public relations department. I got a chance to help kids get scholarships for college, help with the special fundraising events, and just really enjoyed that experience and thought that I could make a career in the nonprofit realm. And so there was a fork in the road for me because I had an opportunity to work for Coca-Cola. Actually, at the time, it was more money that I had ever made in my life. And then this opportunity with AmeriCorps came about. And so for those of you who aren't familiar, AmeriCorps does not pay great at all, actually. And so it was a big sacrifice, but the thought of working with high school and college students, engaging them in professional development as well as community service really stood out to me. And so I made that leap of faith. I did AmeriCorps. The top picture here was with our first cohort with Hairston State University. And so really just enjoyed that work and working with the college and high school students. After that 2-year stint, the program ran out of money. And so I moved on to another AmeriCorps position. This time it was at Earth Dance Organic Farm School out in Ferguson. And so I was the volunteer coordinator there and really enjoyed that work. I got a crash course in organic farming. I literally worked on this 14-acre organic farm in the middle of Ferguson. It was a really incredible experience. And working with kids, we had a connection with the Ferguson Florissant School District. And so seeing kids, Black kids specifically, who look like me, running around the farm, feeding the chickens, tasting fresh herbs out of the ground, was a really incredible experience. And so I wanted somehow, some way to pursue that more. And so after AmeriCorps, I started working for Seed St. Louis, formerly Gateway Greening. And so when that happened, I took over the garden at Clay Elementary as well as Columbia Elementary. So I work with pre-K through 5th grade, teaching kids about nature, about science, about where their food comes from, as well as managing the school gardens. And so at this point, I had worked for several different nonprofits. I had done lots of work. I worked with hundreds of students all over the greater St. Louis area. But I felt like that something was missing. I felt like there was so much more work that needed to be done. So my time at C. St. Louis, I was able to be involved within St. Louis Public Schools without being an official teacher through our partnership. And so seeing what was happening within those schools, seeing the need among the students, experiencing multiple of my students being killed during my time teaching them was a really frustrating but also inspiring opportunity for me to do more. And so based on all of my experience that I had collected over time, I used that to learn more, to grow. Eventually, I would start Ujima, but we'll talk about that in a second. So Ujima is a Swahili word that means collective work and responsibility. It is one of the 7 principles of Kwanzaa. And growing up, my grandma made sure that in addition to celebrate Christmas, we also celebrated Kwanzaa. And so when I think about the things that plague our society, it's going to take a collective of people who believe in something bigger than themselves. And so for me, I think Ujima really fits what we want to accomplish as an organization. And also have some individuals on here as well as some organizations that I'm going to highlight that really served as inspiration for me, and then also inspiration for how we operate as a nonprofit. So I'll go with let's go with the first row first. So One World Everybody Eats is a national nonprofit that supports organizations that operate a donation-based or pay-what-you-can model. So the idea being that access to food is a human right. And so by having this donation-based pay what you can model, it breaks down those economic barriers in terms of food access. And then it also brings community together as well. And so I got a chance to go to the One World Everybody Eats Summit in 2017 as well as 2018. It was in New Orleans, one of my favorite cities. And so I really enjoyed connecting with folks all over the country who really believed in food justice. There were vegan food trucks, there were church groups, there were college students like yourselves organizing with professors to create community cafes. So many different ways to supporting the community was found in that space. And so it was a really cool opportunity for me to network and serve as inspiration for what would later become Ujima. So for those of you all who aren't familiar, Homeboy Industries is in Los Angeles, California. It was started in the 80s by a priest who was really concerned about the gang violence and activity that was happening in that time. Especially in the 80s, LA had one of the largest concentrations of gangs in the country. And so oftentimes what happens is a cycle of incarceration, a cycle of unemployment. And so the goal of Homeboy Industries was to create opportunities for folks who have been incarcerated, former felons, giving them job opportunities. They also created value-added products as well, they also created a restaurant and all different types of opportunities for folks within those communities and giving folks a chance to really not just rehabilitate their lives, but restore communities as well. And so we'll move to that second row. So on the left here, we have Booker T. Whately, not to be confused with Booker T. Washington. So Booker T. Whately was a really incredible farmer who focused on building relationships with their customers. So if you are familiar with CSAs, community shared agriculture, so Booker T. Whately was one of the pioneers of those type of systems within farms. So the pick your own, for example, like at Eckert's, when you can pick your own in the orchard, that was also something that he developed as well. And so I think that there is another experience when you can have people come to where their food is being grown to actually pick it yourself and have a conversation with them. I think completely changes the experience that we have with food. And so Booker T. Whately also wrote books about agribusiness and how to really maximize small farm plots in order to make a living within farming, which can be very difficult. In the center here, we have George Washington Carver. So he is definitely one of my heroes. Obviously, we named the farm after him, but George Washington Carver, I think, was a really unique person in that he had so many passions. He actually went to college to be an artist and a musician. He loved to paint. He also loved to play the piano, but his advisor recommended that he transfer to agricultural studies because at the time there weren't a lot of career opportunities for Black folks. And so he was like, okay, and just pivoted and became one of the greatest farmers and scientists of all time. And so just an incredible human being. The things that he was able to do at Tuskegee University to provide opportunities for Black farmers in the South in a time in which there weren't a lot of opportunities to make money. And just the impact that he has had on agriculture is still seen today. And a lot of what we learn from the principles of permaculture were things that Carver was doing decades before. And so we really want to, specifically at our farm, continue his legacy of loving the planet, art, and for music, as well as education. So big shout out to Carver. On the right here, we have Leah Penniman. She is the founder of Soul Fire Farm, which is in New York. She's also the author of Farmer While Black. And so this book is one of my faves. The introduction literally gives me chills every time I read it. But I was able to get that book, I believe it was 2018, 2019. And I just really connected with it, and to see myself in agriculture spaces, to see the history that Black folks in particular have in agriculture, I think was really powerful experience for me. And just to see the powerful work that they're doing in New York in terms of food justice and empowering communities is really amazing. At the bottom, so we have So All May Eat Cafe. So they are currently in Denver, Colorado. They're doing some incredible things. They just opened another community cafe. I forget the name of the university, but they also have another brick and mortar cafe space as well as a food truck. So I got introduced to them while I was in AmeriCorps at the United Way. The original founders, Brad and Libby, are actually from St. Louis. I just so happened to reach out to them, talk to them on the phone for like an hour. And then a year later, I got a chance to go to Denver and volunteer there. And so obviously they're connected with One World Everybody Eats, but that was my first experience in a nonprofit pay what you can cafe. And so to walk into a place and see a menu with no prices, to see that customers can exchange money for their meal, they can volunteer for 30 minutes, or they can donate produce in exchange for a meal. And so for me, I thought that was really powerful. And there are lots of different folks that are doing similar work, but I thought that the work that they were doing in Denver was really incredible. And so they are definitely folks that we look up to in terms of food justice work. To the next here, we have Karen Washington. So I'm sure many of you all have heard of food deserts before, but Karen is actually known for coining the term food apartheid. And so food apartheid refers to the very intentional way in which our communities are constructed. The reality is certain communities, grocery stores will not build there. They're due to being a security risk, or due to believing that the folks living in those communities don't have the capacity or the means to pay for their products. And so what you have is areas and pockets of, not just here in St. Louis, but all over, in which communities have been divested in for decades, in which you have little to no options for food at all. And the options that you do have are don't have the nutrients that are needed for folks to have healthy lives and healthy communities. And so Karen has been doing some incredible work on the East Coast as well. She's on the board of Soul Fire Farm, and just an incredible individual doing some amazing work. Life Lab. So when I was at Seed St. Louis, I got a chance to do a training retreat in Santa Cruz. And so Life Lab, also Beatles, I forget what the acronym stands for, but they are folks on the West Coast who are doing incredible outdoor education work. I was really inspired about the things that are happening over in California, to see schools that are miles away from the ocean, and just to see how things are done there was really inspiring, and definitely want to continue that work here in St. Louis for sure. So Earthworks Urban Farm. So last year I got a chance to visit Detroit to check out some urban farms, and Earthworks was one of those farms. They are connected to the Chaplain Soup Kitchen, which is a Catholic organization that has a bunch of different resources for folks in Detroit. I was really impressed about the things that they were doing on their campus. One of the things that impressed me were was that they had an outdoor shower station. So it was something that they had built on the campus since the pandemic had started. And it was literally a space for folks to come take a shower. There was a changing room. The facilities were heated, so it can be accessible in the wintertime. They also had a portable bike station, so folks in the community can get their bike fixed. They also have folks on staff that can help repair bikes as well. And so in addition to having an urban farm and feeding people. And so just really thankful for them and the work that they do. And we definitely want to incorporate some of those elements in our farm once we get going, for sure. In the bottom right here, we have the Black Panther Party and their free breakfast program in Oakland. And so I know personally growing up, I did not get the education that I needed around the Black Panther Party. I think that they were very much cast as a violent vigilante organization, but in reality, they were looking to protect themselves and their communities. And things like a free breakfast program are things that are still needed today. And so they also provide inspiration for us as we continue to do this work, for sure. So in 2018, Ujima was born. Again, I was just looking for an opportunity to combine my passions of food justice, taking care of the planet, and empowering the next generation. And so this organization has allowed me to do that in several capacities. So we've inherited the Clay Elementary Garden, and we have grown 800 pounds of food since we've taken over the space. We've produced over 300 pay what you can donation-based meals to the community. We have collected 5,000 pounds of trash in the Fairground and Hyde Park neighborhood. We've done composting, vermicomposting. We've also launched an apprenticeship program, which I am really proud of. We pay our participants $20 an hour to work with us part-time, to learn about agriculture, to learn about culinary arts, entrepreneurship, and then we also connect them to an occupational therapist to really emphasize mental health and create support systems around that. So I wanted to provide a little bit of context about where we are in North St. Louis City. So the city has consolidated the wards, and so we are technically no longer part of the 3rd ward. We are technically in the 11th ward, and then I believe the Clay Garden is now 14th ward, I forget, but it's all jumbled up now. But I wanted to give y'all a little background about these areas. So Fairground is where our farm site currently is. It's actually a former farmland. So French settlers actually started to cultivate that land. And then just before just after the Civil War, a group of businessmen started the St. Louis Agriculture and Mechanical Association. And so at that time, Fairground was actually a thriving community. They actually used to race horses in the park. They had amphitheaters. They had, as well as agro-tourism, so many different wonderful amenities within that community space. And in typical American fashion, racism likes to ruin a lot of things. And so in 1949, there were some brand new pools built in Fairground Park. At the time, they were basically considered state of the art and were basically some of the nicest pools that you can find in the Midwest. And so I forget the gentleman's name, but the director of safety and health declared that all of the pools within Fairground Park would be desegregated. He believed that because it was a public space, any taxpayer had a right to swim in those pools. And so when it opened in 1949, of course, some Black children came to swim, and that did not go over very well. There was a riot outside of the pool. Several students had to be hospitalized. They had to get police escort out of the space. And then the mayor at the time segregated the pool. And so not until 1950, a federal judge overturned that and then allowed for the pools to be desegregated. And so that set off a chain reaction in which folks moved out of the community, businesses moved out of the community, several decades of divestment. And so the reality is this once thriving community is now filled with vacant buildings, unemployment, as well as violence. And so the reality is we have some work to do in this community. And so we took an opportunity to purchase some land. We were partnering with a chef who had a house in a couple of lots that we were partnering with. We purchased 3 LRA lots that were owned by the city just behind it. While we were purchasing that, we then bought the house and the 2 lots on Penrose. So we went from 3 lots to an urban farm in just a matter of months. And so yeah, just again, super excited for the opportunity. And I think to be in Fairground neighborhood to me means even more because I want to bring some magic back to that community that was once thriving. So a little bit about Hyde Park. So that is where our garden space is currently. So let's see if I can find it. Right around about here is where the garden is. And so unfortunately last year, St. Louis Public Schools decided to close Clay Elementary. And I had been managing that garden since 2017. And so there wasn't a lot of communication from the district. And so we basically inherited the space. Now we have at least an understanding with the district that we will be growing in that space, at least for the next 2 years while we get our farm site up to speed. But we are currently growing at the clay garden still, and the goal for this year is 1,000 pounds of food. So really excited for the opportunity to really maximize that space while we get our garden site up and running. And just a little bit about Hyde Park. So it was actually named after a German town called Bremen. Back in the day, a bunch of German families settled in this area. And it's why it's named Bremen originally. In addition to that, Hyde Park has some really unique historic water towers. So there are 5 of these water towers in the world. 2 of them are in Hyde Park. And so there are really cool structures if you ever get a chance to check them out. But I thought that was really cool. Also, some of the oldest homes in St. Louis City are in Hyde Park. And so there are some really gorgeous buildings, but there are also some really rough looking buildings who have dilapidated over several decades of inactivity. And so again, much like Fairground neighborhood, was once a thriving neighborhood, a thriving community. Across the street from the school that now closed used to be a library. Across the street from that used to be a gorgeous row of 4-family flat brick homes. 90% of them are now vacant. And so the reality is there is lots of poverty, which means violence and crime is not far behind. And so we realize that it's definitely an uphill battle, especially operating in these communities. But at the same time, we know that the need is great. And so we definitely want to do our part to make sure that we are supporting these communities. So this is a Google snapshot of our site currently. So this is going to be our office space, the house here. Then we have the 2 lots, and then these 3 lots here will be what we call Victory and Peace Park. And I'll go in a little more detail into that in a minute. But just wanted to give y'all a snapshot of where we are. So all of the properties that have been highlighted are owned by the city and are properties that we wish to acquire down the road. So over the next 3 to 4 months, we will be developing these 2 sites. And once that gets developed, the plan is to acquire these properties as well so we can expand our operations. So I wanted to share a quick quote from Eugenia South. So she is a professor at the University of Penn who's doing some really incredible work around environmental justice. And so she has done a lot of boots on the ground work of building green infrastructure and rehabilitating Black and marginalized communities within Philadelphia and seeing all the types of benefits that come from that. So really quick, I want to read it. The remediation of vacant and dilapidated physical environments, particularly in resource-limited urban settings, can be an important tool for communities to address mental health problems alongside other patient-level treatments. So long story short, she was able to find so many things that were able to be improved just by adding green infrastructure. And so oftentimes Black and marginalized communities have a lack of trees. So adding trees increases the air quality. It also increases the amount of shade, which cools temperatures in these urban environments. You also think about adding green infrastructure also reduces things like depression and mental health issues that folks in these communities may experience. She also did some studies around folks who are pregnant and how those folks also benefit from being in spaces that have green infrastructure and things of that nature. And so it's really powerful to see how taking care of the planet creates so many other benefits for a community, not just having it look nice. And so really grateful for the work that Professor Eugenia is doing. And it definitely influences the work that we do for sure. And so this is a snapshot of our property on Penrose. That's our house there. And then these are our lots on Penrose. We are currently taking down this fence that was really poorly put together. We're going to put up a new one. And then in this space is going to be our outdoor classroom and demonstration garden. So we'll have raised beds, we'll have arbors, trellises, different types of ways to grow things so people can see different types of agriculture in action. And so these here are some rain barrels that we got through Custom Foodscaping. So they built a rain catchment system. And so it's actually completed now. And so we can harvest rainwater from the roof and collect it into these barrels. And eventually when we get the site set up, we'll be able to hook up some PVC piping to push the water out into the farm. So just another way for us to harvest rainwater and utilize it in our space. So super excited about that. And so I just wanted to give y'all a quick video to see what the property looks like. This is going to show you some of the vacant buildings that exist next to our property. And just to give you a little snapshot of where we are in the Fairground neighborhood. Hopefully it plays. Is it? Well, I guess we won't get a video. It's going on the.
Yeah.
Let me try it. Let me try it again. Well, I guess we won't have a video. That's okay.
You might be asking too much of the.
All right, we got too much stuff going on at once. We try one more time. But if not, we'll keep it moving. That's all right. That means y'all just gotta come see us in person. All right, moving on. So phase one, we are over the next 3 months going to be investing a little bit under $200,000 into the space. We're going to be adding a native garden as well as a demonstration garden on site. We'll have an outdoor classroom as well. My favorite part of this experience, though, is going to be Victory and Peace Park. So this park is named after a book that George Washington Carver wrote just before he died called Nature's Garden for Victory and Peace. And so this was a manual that was given out to free for people to identify wild edible plants. He also included nutrition facts around these, as well as recipes for people to go into open spaces like parks to harvest food that they can take home and enjoy, realizing that there are a lot of food insecure families, especially in the South. And so he wanted to create a guide for people to feed themselves and their families. And so we will incorporate some of that in the space. And then we're also teaming up with Dr. Amber Johnson and SLU and the Justice Fleet. And so a real quick backstory. So around the pandemic, I was on social media. So I have a Twitter, but I'm not on Twitter, if that makes sense. And so I began to see a lot of things referring to grief and how we as a society do not have opportunities for folks to grieve in groups or individually. And so realizing that we, in the midst of this pandemic, are experiencing so much loss on top of the violence that is happening in this country. And so it seems to be on what I was viewing a need for that community type of healing, that community type of justice. And so fast forward, I saw a post from Dr. Amber Johnson talking about a grief garden. So creating a space in which folks can honor loved ones who are no longer with us, space for us to process the racism and trauma that is happening in our communities, spaces to gather and just to love one another, gather to reflect, gather to meditate. And so once I saw the concept and saw that they were raising money, I was like, however we can be involved, let us know. And so next thing you know, we had the partnership and the opportunity to build a grief garden on our site. And so on the Victory and Peace Park side of the farm, we will have an art sculpture, we'll have a fish pond, we'll have an outdoor chalkboard where folks can leave messages for loved ones who are no longer with us. And so I'm just really excited about this opportunity, especially because we're in Fairground neighborhood. I think it's even more important to have spaces like that. And so again, super grateful for this opportunity. And yeah, we're just taking it a day at a time for sure. So what's next? We are going to be doing some strategic planning just to strengthen ourselves as an organization. We are still very much a startup. I am the only full-time person on staff. And so we luckily have now had volunteers. We got an intern through WashU. We got a farm manager to help me part-time now. And so we have support, but we definitely need to strengthen our systems as we scale up as an organization. And so we're going to be doing some strategic planning to make sure that the systems we have in place are built with equity, and super excited for that process. I mentioned earlier that we are surrounded by vacant properties. And so we definitely want to purchase more land to utilize. And I think that speaks to the opportunity that we now have to create equitable housing. So recently there was a report done on St. Louis's housing situation. And so there was a report card developed and we got an F, which means that there are thousands of folks who are looking for housing, period, or better housing. And so realizing that we have all of these vacant properties, how can we rehabilitate those properties and create housing opportunities for people? In addition, we want to create housing opportunities for future employees. We want to develop a farmer apprenticeship program in which we have folks stay on the farm site seasonally. And so definitely looking to not just grow food, but really empower this community now that we're there. And then we're also looking into expanding in value-added products. So we're partnering with a chef who's currently in Atlanta to create our own salsa. And so really excited about that because that will open the door for ketchup and mustard and barbecue sauce. And so just really excited. Now that we have this farm, we have a foundation to really take things to another level. And ultimately for me, I think urban agriculture is the piece that ties everything together. So with the farm, we can now leverage that to create youth empowerment through our apprenticeship program. We can leverage that to do environmental justice through our cleanup efforts. We can leverage that to improve the community by adding a fish pond can improve the air quality as well as cool the temperatures in those communities. And so everything that we want to do, everything that we want to accomplish can be done so through this farm. And so we have, hopefully we have our ancestor Carver's endorsement, and we are just grateful for the opportunity to continue his legacy. And as someone who started off wanting to be a chemical engineer, this has definitely been quite the journey. And again, just super grateful for the opportunity and excited for what's next, for sure. We got one more, I promise, and then that's it. So how to get involved? Not gonna lie, y'all, we need some money. Y'all just seen, we trying to raise 193,000. We need checks with the commas. And so, you know, that's the reality of the society that we're in. We need to raise money so we can provide support to people. So whether that's a one-time check, whether that's more of a sustainable donation, even if it's $10 a month, like we appreciate it, and it will go towards the development of our farm as well as community empowerment within the Fairground and Hyde Park neighborhoods. Just as important as money is volunteering. I forget what the numbers are, but I think the average volunteer hour is worth like $22.50 or something like that. And so volunteers, having people who are willing to put boots on the ground on the farm site or at the clay garden is something that is definitely needed and welcome. You can also come out for a tour. You can also hire us for some educational workshops. We have farm merch now, so we got hoodies, t-shirts, and we even got masks. So feel free to reach out if you're interested in those. All the proceeds, again, are going to go to the first phase. You can also join the team. We may have one additional internship position available. And then we also are looking for board members as well. So definitely welcome that. We are under Ujima STL. We are on everything. So Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, all of that. Under the George Washington Carver Farms tag, we're just on Instagram though. But you can find us through the Ujima STL. If you want to sign up for a volunteer opportunity, you can text us or call us. And then these are our two websites as well if you want to learn more about what we're doing. Again, super grateful for this. Thank y'all for sitting and listening to me ramble about my journey and how I got to this point. And again, thank you again so much.
open it up to questions. I'm hopeful that I know we might have some questions coming in through the chat in our YouTube stream, but also open up for questions here in our space here. The folks have questions for Nick. Yeah, go for it.
I'm not familiar with the term value-added products. What is that?
Yeah, so that essentially refers to taking produce, taking herbs, and then turn it into something even more valuable. So taking, for example, tomatoes and peppers and turning it into a salsa, or taking, a bunch of salad greens and then creating a salad mix that you sell, or taking dried herbs and making a tea blend. So taking existing produce and turning it into something that can be then resold. And something that obviously has value.
And maybe a greater value than the vegetables alone.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Thanks.
So thanks so much for coming to speak. But I was wondering, how do you guys do your distribution? Is it through, is it kind of more of a news thing, or you guys do like monthly, bi-weekly events to kind of help mass distribution?
Yeah, that's a good question. So for this year, our first growing season, we are at a farmer's market every Saturday in Hyde Park, which is walking distance from our clay garden. So that's been awesome. So the produce that we bring there is donation based, so pay what you can. And then the rest of what we have goes to mutual aid efforts throughout St. Louis. So a Red Circle in North County, Solidarity Economy in South City, and then Growing Food, Growing People all receive our produce and then distribute it out to folks who need it.
Beth, do we have any questions through the chat?
We do. We have comments from another staff member. Thanks for the great talk, Nick. What sort of crops do you grow and how did you make those decisions?
That's a good question. So for this first year, we got a lot of donations. So Seed St. Louis donated a bunch of kale to us. They also donated broccoli, cabbage, and then we also got a bunch of onions, chard, beets, fennel, and some other things that I'm probably forgetting from Confluence Farms, which is in North County. Whatever we got, we put it in the ground. And so there was not a lot of planning behind this year's growing season, just because we got so many other things to do in terms of getting the property together. But for this year, we're just taking from what our friends have donated to us, and we've just been kind of incorporating it. But we also had like things like mint, sage, garlic, onions, things like that. We had already had established in the clay garden space, so that was just easy to continue those crops because they're perennials and come back. Except the garlic, of course, but those herbs and stuff are really easy. And so, definitely.
I have a question. How are you engaging with the local community? Are you doing workshops, or is it a kind of more formalized thing, or are you kind of waiting for them to come to you? How are you kind of engaging?
Yeah, so in this early process through phase one, we are just doing neighborhood walks and just going around and talking to people, having conversations, letting people know that we're there. This Saturday, we're gonna have a cleanup event with Earth Day 365. So letting people know, hey, stop by. We got some free veggies. We got some juice from Juice Masters, and we're just gonna clean up around the community. So we're gonna continue to do things like that. But then also, now that we have the farm space, looking to maybe do like movie screenings and show things like the Netflix documentary High on the Hog and things of that nature. And so we definitely want to incorporate the community as much as possible and make them feel like that they are a part of this as well. It's not just us showing up. And we definitely want to be a resource for sure.
Wonderful. We have another question from YouTube, from Derek McFarland. What have been your greatest learned lessons since starting urban farming?
That's a good one. I would say, in farming and just running a nonprofit in general, I think for me, the biggest lesson is being willing to pivot, just because life comes with so many curveballs and changes, and just being willing to stay true to your passions, and being willing to adapt. We by no means started Ujima thinking that we were going to have an urban farm, and the opportunity came to itself, and we had to pivot just because it fit within our mission. It allowed us to do everything, but even at a greater scale. And so, for sure.
Wonderful. Derek also wanted, it was just a follow-up comment. He said, also great talk. This makes me want to grow food in my apartment.
Awesome. I love it. Yes, that's the best food you can have, food that you grow yourself. For sure.
Do you ever set up times for folks to come do a work day, or your work days are pre-planned and then we just sign up? Because there's already a whole thing going on with mentors talking about maybe we could volunteer our time. We have a bunch of young people that are really interested in this. And so how does that work? How can we get
so
involved?
usually we have volunteers come out on Saturdays, but if it's a group, we can plan something out for sure on another day if that works better. But we typically have volunteers come out and help on Saturdays, either at the farmer's market, or if, like, for example, Saturday, we got the cleanup day. So we invite folks to come to that.
More questions? Yeah, go for it.
Do you think that like greenhouse farming or just stick to seasonal?
Yeah, that's a good question. So once we get the farm site together, we definitely want to create systems in which we can grow indoors, whether that be like a hydroponic system, or like those tower gardens. I think that would be the next logical step for us, just because once that frost hits, we're done in terms of our production. And so obviously folks got to eat in the winter too. So yeah, that's definitely something on our radar as we continue to expand.
What kind of workshops do you run?
Yeah, that's a good question. So through my work with St. Louis, a vast majority of my requests for workshops have been like outdoor education, engaging kids with nature. But I've also done things geared around, if you want to start a community garden, what would that look like? Or I've done things around vermicomposting and how can you have a vermicompost system at home or at school. I've done things around Black leaders in agriculture. I've gotten requests for that as well. So anything around that wheelhouse is something that I'm capable of, or the team is capable of.
Anything else from online, Beth?
Online.
I think I'm supposed to ask on behalf of Tyson. Would you take a donation of raised garden bed infrastructure?
Yes, for sure.
We had an organic garden here on site for a number of years that we just have been unable to maintain. And certainly through the pandemic, it just became a disaster because we weren't on site. But we have those frames, and we're looking to take them down so that site can be reused for a site for the Monarch project. And so we would love to maybe work together to dismantle that and donate the raised bed structures to you.
That would be awesome. Yes, for
Yay!
sure.
Connection in real time.
Yes, yes.
Okay, awesome, awesome. I want to pause for any last burning questions. Give it a second. Yeah.
So yesterday we had a good primer on how environmental racism affects the ecology of urban environments. And I'm curious if there's been any challenges with the soil or some of the other environmental conditions that make it harder or maybe even benefit the farming.
Yeah, so that's a good question. So we were able to get some of the soil on site tested through Lincoln University. We're still waiting to get the results back, but I'm not optimistic, to be honest, just because 4 of our lots used to have houses on them that were knocked down and then bulldozed over. And so I'm sure that a lot of those basements and things like that are still left in the ground. And so because of that, I think in our first initial phase, the focus is going to be on more raised beds and other structures that we can grow in versus in ground. And eventually, once we can repair the soil, I definitely want to incorporate those in-ground beds for sure, just because, yeah, you can get a lot of production out of those in-ground beds, and then you can also continue to reuse them as well. So, yeah, that's something that's definitely on our radar. We're also looking to, well, I'm personally looking into plants that also help restore the soil. So things like hydrangeas, sunflowers, bamboo. I've been learning about how hemp and cannabis can also restore the soil as well. So looking for ways to, repair the land that we have now that we have it. And so that's definitely something that we think about for sure.
All right. Well, I personally, I'm absolutely inspired, and clearly some folks at Tyson were too, because my phone was blowing up. They were having ideas of how we could become involved in this work. I hope you all found it just as inspiring. It is really important to us that we provide a forum for sharing out the strong work that is being done in the St. Louis region like this. So I am so glad. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. I think it was also really important. Hope the young folks here do think it was important to hear Nick's personal story and journey, that it is a journey and you are not there yet. So there are many twists and turns that come along the way before you find your passion. And so I really appreciate you sharing the personal as well as this amazing work with us. So let's thank Nick again.